My name is David Holdeman. I'm a professor of English and department chair at the University of North Texas, and I've written or edited several books about the Irish poet W.B. Yeats, and I'm going to read one of his best-known poems called The Lake Isle of Innisfree and talk about it for a few minutes. And if this is a poem you're not familiar with, it would be helpful to know that Innisfree is a real island in the west of Ireland near Sligo, which is where Yeats spent time as a boy. He wrote this poem in the early 1890s. At the end of the poem, there are reference to standing on the pavement's grey. So the person speaking this poem is in the city and longing to be back in the rural Irish West, the beautiful place that he grew up in, the Lake Isle of Innisfree. I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's gray, I hear it in the deep heart's core. So the poem is most obviously a nature poem. It's being spoken by somebody who's standing on the roadway or on the pavement's gray and who wants to get back to this beautiful place, the Lake Isle of Innisfree in the rural Irish West. Yeats had been reading Thoreau when he wrote the poem, and the sort of notion of living on an island with a cabin and bean rows and so forth very much evokes the kind of nature writing we might associate it with Thoreau. But one of the things that interests me about the poem is the way it becomes more than just a nature poem. The way the poem suggests that the speaker also desires to go on a spiritual journey within the now of the poem itself. And I think that that implication that the poem is about a spiritual journey is particularly strong in the second stanza, which talks about wanting to have some peace, going to a place where peace comes dropping slow, this reference to the vales of the morning, and sort of the atmosphere we get associated with Innisfree in lines like, midnight's all a glimmer and noon a purple glow. It's interesting the way the poet associates the dark time of midnight with some light glimmering and the bright time of noon with a purple glow. It's as though midnight and noon are kind of adopting qualities associated with the other. It's almost as though time has stopped or we've entered a realm outside of time. The fact that the poem is a sort of about a spiritual journey is also, of course, reinforced in the last line of the poem, where the speaker says that he hears this calling from the Lake Isle of Innisfree in the deep heart's core. So the poem is a nature poem, and it's also a poem about a spiritual journey. And then finally, I think it's also implicitly a kind of political poem, surprisingly enough, even though it makes no direct reference to anything political. Yeats was writing this poem in the 1890s at a time when Ireland was still a part of the British Empire, and in the British popular press and political cartoons and a lot of writing of the day, the Irish were often described as little better than primitive savages. The Irish West in particular was associated in most people's minds with poverty and backwardness. It had been ravaged in the middle of the 19th century by famine. So in a way, there's a politics involved in associating the Irish West and Ireland with qualities like beauty and truth and spiritual purity. It's kind of easy. I'm thinking of the speaker at the end of the poem, standing on the pavement's gray. One thinks of all the Irish who immigrated to places like London or Boston or New York and missed their homeland, wanted to go back to it. And I think that the fact that the poem became so popular was partly due to the fact that it really struck a chord with Irish immigrants who were reading it